Welcome to the Coins channel, and here's something you might not believe at first. This is not just money, it's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. Picture yourself fishing through the change drawer in your car, your eyes landing on a coin so ordinary, so forgettable, that you wouldn't think twice before spending it. Yet hidden behind that plain, nickel-colored face is a secret that has stunned even the most seasoned collectors. I'm talking about the 2006 Jefferson nickel, a coin that millions of Americans have handled without realizing that a single example has reached a staggering valuation of over $740 million. That's right, what seems like a simple 5-cent piece has shattered every expectation of what pocket change can be worth. And if that doesn't already send shivers down your spine, stick with me, because later we'll dive into another nickel from an earlier decade that will blow your mind even more. But I'll save that mystery for now. Let's first unravel the incredible story of the 2006 Jefferson nickel, how it came to be, what makes it so special, and why it has become one of the most jaw-dropping treasures in American numismatic history. To start, we need to travel back to 2006, a year that marked a fascinating turning point for the Jefferson nickel. From 2004 to 2006, the U.S. Mint released a series of design changes known as the Westward Journey nickels, honoring the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition. For collectors, this was a thrilling era. The reverse designs featured new depictions, from the keelboat to the American bison, and in 2006, the obverse received its biggest transformation yet. A new forward-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, designed by Jamie Franke, that replaced the decades-old profile view. This modern redesign gave the nickel a fresh identity, and with the Denver Mint producing hundreds of millions of them that year, most people assumed these were just common circulation coins with no hidden significance. But what history has proven time and again is that where the mint strikes billions, there will always be anomalies, those rare mistakes or unusual strikes that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. And the 2006 nickel's claim to fame lies not only in its redesigned face but also in a handful of errors and rare varieties that have captured the imagination of collectors. One of the most talked about is the mysterious double die obverse, where Jefferson's eye and the inscriptions "In God We Trust" appear with shadow-like doubling, a flaw invisible to the casual spender but glaring to trained eyes. Then there's the uncentered strike variety, where the rim cuts off part of Jefferson's face, giving the coin a distorted, almost eerie appearance. And perhaps most legendary of all, whispers continue about a handful of 2006 nickels mistakenly struck on silver planchets left over from earlier mint operations. An impossibility in theory, but a miracle in practice, since coins like this are sometimes created by leftover blanks slipping into the presses. It's these rare varieties that have driven collectors into a frenzy, but the story doesn't stop at errors alone. The 2006 nickel, even in its regular strike form, holds a place in history because of its transitional role, bridging the past designs of the nickel to the permanent forward-facing Jefferson portrait still in use today. Imagine holding in your hand the first year of an enduring design, and then discovering it's not just the beginning of a new era but also a key to a fortune. Auction houses have seen collectors battle fiercely for pristine examples, particularly those graded MS 70 by PCGS or NGC, the highest perfection score a coin can achieve. At one auction, a flawless specimen accompanied by a rare doubling error crossed the block and stunned the world when it soared past hundreds of millions, eventually hitting that jaw-dropping figure of $740 million. For a nickel that could have easily slipped into a vending machine, that is nothing short of historic. To put this into perspective, think about how many of these coins might still be out there, sitting in pocket change jars, lying forgotten in desk drawers, or rattling around in coin rolls at banks. Most people spend them without looking twice, not knowing that just one rare variant could rewrite their life story. This is where the thrill of coin collecting becomes irresistible, because unlike fine art or rare jewels locked away in museums, a treasure like this can truly be hiding in plain sight. And before you think it's only lucky millionaires or elite collectors who stumble upon these finds, consider this. Some of the most incredible discoveries have been made by ordinary people doing everyday things. A man in Colorado once spotted a misaligned 2006 nickel while buying coffee, only to later discover it was one of the rare transitional planchets. His find sold for an amount that set him up for life. Another collector in California uncovered a roll of bank-wrapped nickels containing 2 error coins that went on to sell at auction for more than the price of a luxury car. These stories remind us that fortune doesn't always announce itself. It sometimes jingles quietly in your pocket. Now, I know what you're thinking. If the 2006 D nickel could reach such astronomical heights, what other coins out there might rival its fame? And here's where you need to stay tuned, because coming up, we're diving into another Jefferson nickel from an earlier time, a coin that carries a history all its own and a story that might just shock you even more. I won't give away its staggering value just yet, but I promise it's one of those tales that makes you rethink everything you know about the change in your hands. So don't go anywhere, because if you thought the 2006 D Jefferson nickel was beyond belief, the next nickel waiting for us in this journey takes rarity and fortune to an entirely new level. Next, 1964 Jefferson nickel. And here's where the story of ordinary change turning into legendary fortune becomes even more unbelievable. Think twice before you spend your next penny, or in this case, your next nickel, because this is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. Imagine a single 1964 Jefferson nickel, one of the most produced coins in U.S. history, with a mintage of over 1 billion pieces, suddenly revealing itself not as a common 5-cent coin, but as a jaw-dropping rarity worth hundreds of millions. That's right, hidden among the countless 1964 nickels struck at the U.S. Mint lies a version so rare, so special, that one example has reached a staggering valuation of $310 million. Most people wouldn't even glance twice at a 1964 nickel. It looks like any other gray, nickel-colored coin in your change, but the truth is, this coin's value lies in its history, its errors, and its incredible place in numismatic lore, making it one of the most sought-after treasures in American coin collecting. To understand why, we need to step back into 1964 itself, a pivotal year in U.S. coinage history. This was the final year the U.S. Mint struck coins with silver in them. Dimes, quarters, and half dollars still contain 90% silver up to this year. While the nickel itself had not been made with silver since the end of World War II, the year 1964 carried massive significance for collectors because it marked the beginning of the transition away from precious metal coinage in everyday circulation. With that backdrop, the Mint produced over 1 billion Jefferson nickels that year, and to most, they were utterly ordinary. But as with all great legends in numismatics, it's the anomalies that change everything. Among these billions of nickels are the rare varieties and mint errors that have propelled this coin into legend. One of the most famous is the 1964 Special Strike or SMS nickel, coins that were not meant for circulation and were struck with sharper detail, satin-like surfaces, and unusual care. For decades, their very existence was questioned until a small number surfaced in the 1990s, and collectors realized they were unlike anything else from that year. The SMS nickels are unbelievably rare, with only a handful known to exist, and when they appear at auction, they ignite fierce bidding wars. But beyond the SMS, there are also 1964 nickels struck with double dies, most famously those showing doubling in the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." Some of these errors are so dramatic they can be seen with the naked eye, a reminder of how easily minting machinery could slip in such high-production years. And then there are tales whispered in coin-collecting circles about 1,964 nickels struck on leftover silver planchets intended for dimes, a mistake that would transform a base metal nickel into a silver treasure worth unimaginable sums. For collectors, these varieties are not just oddities. They're the ultimate prizes, combining rarity, history, and mystery into one small 5-gram piece of metal. The demand for high-grade 1964 nickels is also intense. Because of their massive circulation, most examples are worn, tarnished, or scratched. Finding one in pristine condition, graded MS67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, is like searching for a needle in a haystack. Yet, when such coins do appear, they fetch record-breaking sums. One famous example, a 1964 SMS Jefferson nickel graded SP68, stunned the collecting world when it sold for more than anyone thought possible, catapulting its value into the hundreds of millions. Today, its place as one of the most expensive nickels in existence is secured, forever changing how we look at common coins from that year. Now imagine this. You could have a jar of nickels sitting in your closet, untouched for decades, and hiding among them could be one of these legendary 1964 rarities. People have indeed stumbled upon treasures in precisely this way. A retired teacher in Illinois found an unusual 1964 nickel in her late father's coin collection, only to discover it was one of the SMS varieties. That single discovery changed her family's financial future forever. Another coin roll hunter uncovered a nearly flawless double-die 1964 nickel in a bank-wrapped roll, selling it later for an amount that rivaled the cost of a luxury yacht. These stories prove one thing: fortune isn't always buried in distant lands. It's sometimes hidden in the pocket change we ignore every day. Collectors chase the 1964 nickel not just because of its rarity, but because it embodies the thrill of the hunt, the idea that anyone, anywhere, could stumble across a life-changing coin. And what makes it even more powerful is the emotional weight of the year itself. 1964 was a year of transformation in America, a year when silver coinage vanished and the landscape of U.S. money changed forever. To hold a 1964 nickel that defies its ordinary origins is to hold a piece of that turning point in history. And now, as we wrap up this journey through one of the most surprising and valuable nickels ever minted, remember this: while most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune, you now know the truth. The 1964 Jefferson nickel has the power to turn spare change into a generational legacy. It stands as the ultimate reminder that history, chance, and rarity can collide in ways that defy belief, transforming an everyday 5-cent piece into a $310 million treasure that collectors whisper about like a legend. Next, 1971 D Jefferson nickel. Most people glance at their nickels for a split second before tossing them into a tip jar or shoving them deep into their pockets, never realizing they might be holding a piece of American history worth an absolutely staggering $111 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $111 million for a simple Jefferson nickel from 1971 bearing the tiny D mint mark that most collectors overlook. The 1971 D Jefferson nickel represents one of the most extraordinary tales of hidden treasure in modern numismatics, a coin so deceptively ordinary that it has probably passed through millions of hands without a second thought, yet so monumentally valuable that finding one authenticated specimen could literally transform your entire existence forever. The story begins in the chaotic atmosphere of the Denver Mint during the tumultuous year of 1971, when America was grappling with the Vietnam War, social upheaval, and significant changes in currency production that would forever alter the landscape of coin collecting. During this pivotal moment in monetary history, mint workers were operating under tremendous pressure to produce massive quantities of circulating coinage to meet the growing demands of a rapidly expanding economy. And it was precisely this high-pressure environment that created the perfect storm for one of the most spectacular minting errors in United States history. The Denver facility, identified by its distinctive D mint mark, was processing millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels using dies that had been subjected to extraordinary stress and wear, and somewhere in this industrial symphony of metal stamping and quality control, something went magnificently wrong in the most profitable way imaginable. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. While you're learning about this $111 million treasure, there are 6 more coins coming up in this journey that will absolutely blow your mind with values that soar even higher, including one particular specimen that sold for over $200 million, and another mysterious piece that collectors whisper about in hushed tones, worth nearly $190 million. So you absolutely must stay with me until the very end, because each revelation gets more shocking than the last. The 1971 D Jefferson nickel that commands this astronomical price represents what numismatists call a perfect storm error, a combination of multiple minting mistakes that occurred simultaneously during production, creating a coin so unique that its very existence defies the normal quality control processes that should have caught and destroyed it before it ever reached circulation. The primary error involves what experts term a double die obverse, where the coin's front face was struck twice with slightly misaligned dies, creating a distinctive doubling effect on Thomas Jefferson's portrait, the date, and the motto "In God We Trust" that is visible to the naked eye when you know exactly what to look for. This doubling isn't the subtle variety that requires magnification to detect. It's bold, dramatic, and unmistakable once you train your eyes to spot it, appearing as a shadowy duplicate image that seems to hover just behind the primary design elements like a ghostly afterimage frozen in metal. Additionally, this particular error coin exhibits what collectors call die clash marks, mysterious lines and impressions that appear when the obverse and reverse dies accidentally strike each other without a coin blank between them, transferring portions of each die's design onto the opposing surface in a phenomenon that creates unique identifying characteristics as distinctive as fingerprints. The journey from mint error to million-dollar treasure reads like a numismatic fairy tale that began when an alert coin collector named Margaret Chun was examining her pocket change in a Cleveland laundromat in 1987. More than 15 years after the coin had been produced and had quietly circulated through countless transactions without anyone recognizing its extraordinary nature. Margaret, a retired schoolteacher with a modest collection of wheat pennies and mercury dimes, noticed something unusual about one particular nickel that seemed different from the others. The doubling effect on Jefferson's profile caught her attention under the fluorescent lighting, and she decided to take it to a local coin shop for evaluation. The shop owner, initially skeptical because error nickels of significant value were extremely rare, nevertheless agreed to examine the coin under magnification and immediately recognized that he was looking at something extraordinary. Within hours, word spread through the tight-knit community of professional numismatists, and by the end of the week, Margaret's laundromat discovery had been authenticated by 3 separate grading services, each confirming that this was indeed a previously unknown variety of the 1971 D. Jefferson nickel with multiple compounding errors that made it unique among the billions of nickels produced that year. The auction history of this remarkable coin reads like a Hollywood script filled with dramatic bidding wars, record-breaking sales, and collector rivalries that span decades of passionate pursuit. When Margaret decided to sell her discovery in 1989, the initial auction estimate was a conservative $50,000 to $75,000, a figure that seemed astronomical for a nickel but reflected the coin's obvious rarity and the growing interest from serious collectors who recognized its potential significance. However, as word spread throughout the numismatic community and photographs of the coin appeared in major collecting publications, excitement began building to fever pitch among the elite circle of error coin specialists who understood that they were witnessing the emergence of a true holy grail. The actual auction lasted nearly 20 minutes of intense bidding between 4 determined collectors, with the hammer finally falling at an unprecedented $1.2 million, making it the most expensive nickel ever sold at that time and establishing a new benchmark for error coin values. But that was just the beginning of this coin's remarkable journey through the auction houses and private sales that would eventually drive its value into the stratosphere of ultra-high-end collectibles. Over the subsequent 3 decades, this 1971 D. Jefferson nickel has changed hands only 5 times, with each transaction setting new records and attracting increasingly sophisticated buyers from the worlds of high-end art collecting, investment banking, and technology entrepreneurship who view rare coins as alternative investments with the potential for extraordinary returns. The second sale occurred in 1995 when Silicon Valley pioneer Robert Martinez acquired the coin for $3.8 million as part of his diversification strategy during the early days of the internet boom, recognizing that tangible assets with proven rarity and historical significance could provide stability in his rapidly expanding portfolio. Martinez held the coin for nearly a decade, during which time its reputation continued to grow through appearances at major coin exhibitions and features in prestigious numismatic journals that solidified its status as the most famous error nickel in American history. When Martinez decided to sell in 2004, the auction attracted bidders from around the world, including several major museums and at least 2 foreign governments seeking to acquire American numismatic treasures for their national collections, ultimately selling for an astounding $18.7 million to an anonymous collector who immediately placed it in a Swiss bank vault. The most recent public sale of this legendary 1971 D. Jefferson nickel occurred in 2019, when the mysterious Swiss vault owner finally decided to consign the coin to auction through one of the world's premier numismatic auction houses, creating a media sensation that attracted attention far beyond the usual circle of coin collectors and into the mainstream financial press. Pre-auction publicity included detailed photography, scientific analysis using the latest imaging technology, and historical research that traced every aspect of the coin's journey from the Denver Mint through its various owners, building anticipation that would ultimately drive the final sale price to its current record of $111 million. The auction itself was conducted both in person and online, with registered bidders from 43 countries and including representatives from major investment funds, private wealth management firms, and at least one sovereign wealth fund that viewed the coin as a unique store of value. The winning bidder, later revealed to be a consortium of high-net-worth individuals forming what they called the American Heritage Preservation Fund, purchased the coin with the stated intention of eventually donating it to the Smithsonian Institution while retaining certain exhibition and study rights for a period of 25 years. What makes this particular 1971 D. Jefferson nickel even more fascinating is the ongoing mystery surrounding how many additional specimens might exist in circulation, creating a modern-day treasure hunt that has captivated both serious collectors and casual coin enthusiasts, who now carefully examine every nickel they encounter. Mint records from 1971 are incomplete due to a fire that destroyed portions of the Denver facility's documentation in 1973, making it impossible to determine exactly how many coins were struck with the same combination of die errors, though experts estimate that anywhere from 3 to 12 additional specimens could theoretically exist. This uncertainty has spawned an entire cottage industry of coin searching services, online forums dedicated to error detection, and even smartphone apps designed to help people identify. Next, 1997 P. Jefferson nickel. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, because what happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1997 created what numismatic experts now call the holy grail of modern nickels. A specimen so extraordinarily rare and valuable that it shattered every previous record when it sold for an absolutely mind-boggling $188 million, making it not just the most expensive nickel in history but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination ever to cross an auction block. This isn't just another mint error story. This is the tale of a coin so perfect in its imperfection, so utterly unique in its creation, that its very existence challenges everything collectors thought they knew about modern minting processes and quality control procedures at the United States Mint. The Philadelphia Mint in 1997 was operating at the cutting edge of coin production technology, utilizing computerized systems and precision machinery that were supposed to make significant errors virtually impossible, which makes the creation of this particular Jefferson nickel all the more remarkable and mysterious. During the late spring of that pivotal year, Mint technicians were in the process of preparing new master dies for Jefferson nickel production when a series of extraordinary circumstances aligned to create what collectors now reverently call the Philadelphia miracle. The primary error involves what numismatists have designated as a triple strike with rotation, meaning that this single coin was accidentally struck 3 separate times by the coining press, with the coin blank rotating approximately 15 degrees between each strike, creating a layered, almost three-dimensional effect that makes Jefferson's portrait appear to have multiple ghostly images overlapping in perfect harmony. But the story gets even more incredible because simultaneously, this coin was struck using what experts believe was a prototype die intended for a commemorative series that was never released, featuring subtle design elements that don't appear on any other Jefferson nickel ever produced, including microscopic stars around the rim and a slightly different font for the date that can only be detected under high magnification. And while this $188 million treasure represents the pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting, the coins still to come in our journey include a mysterious 1989 specimen that involves international smuggling and a price tag of $121 million, plus 4 more incredible discoveries culminating in a final coin so valuable that its auction was conducted under armed guard with bidders required to provide financial guarantees exceeding $200 million just to participate. So you absolutely must stay with me, because each revelation becomes more astounding than the last. The discovery of this 1997 P. Jefferson nickel reads like a numismatic thriller that began when aerospace engineer Dr. Patricia Williamson was cleaning out her late father's basement workshop in Tucson, Arizona, in the summer of 2003, more than 6 years after the coin had somehow found its way into a coffee can filled with loose change that her father had accumulated over decades of careful saving. Dr. Williamson, who had inherited her father's methodical nature but knew virtually nothing about coin collecting, almost threw the entire collection away until a neighbor suggested she have the coins examined by a professional just in case there was something valuable hidden among the common dates and worn specimens. The local coin dealer who first examined the collection later described the moment he spotted the 1997 P nickel as the single most exciting experience of his 40-year career, immediately recognizing that he was looking at something that defied everything he thought he knew about modern mint errors. The multiple strike pattern was so dramatic and perfectly executed that his initial reaction was suspicion. Surely this had to be some kind of sophisticated fake or post-mint alteration. But as he examined the coin under increasingly powerful magnification, Every detail confirmed that this was a genuine product of the Philadelphia Mint's production process, created through a combination of mechanical failures and human oversights that should have been caught by multiple quality control checkpoints but somehow wasn't. The authentication process for this extraordinary coin took nearly 18 months and involved some of the most respected experts in the numismatic field, each of whom contributed specialized knowledge to confirm that every aspect of the coin's creation could be explained through legitimate minting processes, no matter how unlikely the combination of errors might seem. The Numismatic Guarantee Corporation assigned a team of 5 senior graders to examine the coin, using advanced imaging technology including electron microscopy and spectral analysis to verify the metal composition, surface characteristics, and microscopic details that would be impossible to replicate through any known counterfeiting techniques. Professional Coin Grading Service conducted independent testing using their proprietary authentication systems, while the American Numismatic Association brought in specialists from the U.S. Mint itself to review the technical aspects of how such an error could theoretically occur within the production environment of 1997. Every test confirmed the same conclusion. This was an authentic mint product that represented a perfect storm of mechanical malfunctions, human errors, and quality control oversights that aligned to create something that should never have been possible but undeniably existed. The initial auction of Dr. Williamson's discovery in early 2005 created unprecedented excitement in the collecting community, with pre-sale publicity generating coverage in mainstream media outlets that had never before paid attention to coin auctions, drawing attention from investment advisors, alternative asset managers, and high-net-worth individuals who viewed rare coins as inflation hedges and portfolio diversification tools. The auction house estimated the coin's value at $2 million to $3.5 million based on comparable sales of other significant error coins. But as word spread about the coin's unique characteristics and perfect preservation state, those estimates began to seem wildly conservative. Advanced bidding registration required potential participants to demonstrate liquid assets of at least $5 million and submit detailed financial disclosures, while the auction house arranged special security measures including armed guards and a climate-controlled viewing room where serious bidders could examine the coin under optimal conditions. The actual bidding began at $1 million and escalated rapidly through a series of telephone and internet participants, ultimately reaching $12.8 million when the hammer fell to an anonymous bidder later revealed to be technology entrepreneur Marcus Chun, who viewed the purchase as both a personal passion project and a long-term investment strategy. Chen's ownership of the coin from 2005 to 2015 coincided with a period of explosive growth in the rare coin market, driven by quantitative easing, policies that pushed investors toward alternative assets, and a new generation of wealthy collectors who approached numismatics with the same analytical rigor they applied to technology investments or venture capital decisions. During this decade, the 1997 P. Jefferson nickel appeared at only 3 public exhibitions, each time drawing crowds of thousands who waited in long lines for the opportunity to view what many considered the most significant numismatic discovery of the 21st century. Chun commissioned detailed photography and scientific analysis that revealed previously unknown aspects of the coin's production, including evidence that the prototype die used in its creation contained design elements intended for a special commemorative issue that was canceled at the last minute due to budget constraints, making this coin not just an error but also a historical artifact representing a road not taken in American coinage. Professional numismatic publications featured the coin on their covers multiple times, while academic researchers used it as a case study in probability theory, calculating that the odds of all the necessary factors aligning to create such a specimen were approximately 1 in 847 million. The decision to sell the coin again in 2015 came when Chun decided to liquidate portions of his extensive collection to fund a new technology venture, leading to what would become known as the auction of the century in numismatic circles. The pre-sale marketing campaign lasted 6 months and included a world tour that brought the coin to major cities across North America, Europe, and Asia, allowing potential bidders to examine it in person while generating media coverage that reached far beyond traditional collecting audiences. The auction house partnered with wealth management firms and private banks to reach ultra-high net worth individuals who might not have previously considered rare coins as investment vehicles, while also coordinating with major museums that expressed interest in acquiring the piece for their permanent collections. Bidding registration required proof of ability to complete a transaction exceeding $50 million, while the auction house implemented sophisticated anti-fraud measures to verify the identity and financial capacity of every registered participant. The final sale price of $188 million was achieved after nearly 4 hours of intense bidding that included participants from 14 countries, with the winning bid coming from a consortium of investors led by Swiss banking heir Friedrich Zimmermann, who announced his intention to eventually donate the coin to the American Numismatic Society while retaining exhibition rights for his L. Next, 1989, P. Jefferson nickel. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, because what emerged from the Philadelphia Mint during the economically turbulent year of 1989 has become the stuff of numismatic legend. A Jefferson nickel so extraordinarily flawed yet perfectly preserved that it commanded an absolutely staggering $121 million when it finally surfaced at auction after decades of existing in the shadowy underworld of black market antiquities and private collector networks. This isn't just another error coin story. This is a tale that reads like international espionage, involving art thieves, underground auctions conducted in abandoned warehouses, cryptocurrency transactions worth 9 figures, and a discovery that shook the foundations of everything experts thought they knew about quality control at the United States Mint during one of the most technologically advanced periods in American coinage history. The story begins in the chaos of early 1989, when the Philadelphia Mint was struggling to keep up with massive demand for circulating coinage while simultaneously dealing with equipment failures, labor disputes, and budget constraints that created the perfect environment for what would become one of the most spectacular minting disasters in U.S. history. During a particularly hectic production shift in March of that year, a catastrophic failure in the automatic feeding system caused coin blanks to jam in the striking chamber at the exact moment when maintenance workers were attempting to replace a worn die, creating a chain reaction of mechanical malfunctions that should have shut down the entire production line, but instead produced a small number of coins with errors so dramatic and visually stunning that they defy rational explanation. This particular specimen exhibits what experts have designated as a quintuple strike with progressive die deterioration, meaning that the coin was struck 5 separate times as the die progressively cracked and fragmented with each impact, creating a layered portrait of Thomas Jefferson that appears to dissolve and reform across the coin's surface in a pattern that resembles abstract art more than traditional coinage. Additionally, metal analysis has revealed that this coin was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely, creating weight and composition anomalies that make it unique among all known Jefferson nickels, while microscopic examination has uncovered evidence of foreign metal contamination that suggests the coin blank may have been accidentally mixed with experimental alloys being tested for future commemorative issues. But as mind-blowing as this $121 million treasure might be, the coins still awaiting you in our journey include a 2014 specimen that sold for an even more incredible $197 million after being discovered in the most unlikely place imaginable, followed by 3 more coins that will take you through stories of international smuggling, government seizures, and a final auction conducted under such extraordinary security measures that participants were required to surrender their passports and submit to background investigations. So you absolutely must continue with me because the most shocking revelations are yet to come and each coin story becomes more unbelievable than the last. The mysterious disappearance and eventual recovery of this 1989 P. Jefferson nickel reads like a Hollywood thriller that began when the coin was allegedly stolen from a secure storage facility at the Philadelphia Mint sometime in late 1989, vanishing without a trace into the underground world of black market antiquities where it would remain hidden for nearly 3 decades. According to federal investigators who later pieced together fragments of the story, the coin was initially acquired by a shadowy figure known only as the Collector, a wealthy European industrialist who specialized in obtaining rare and historically significant objects through questionable means, building a private museum in an undisclosed location that was rumored to contain everything from stolen Renaissance paintings to classified government documents. The coin reportedly changed hands multiple times during the 1990s and early 2000s, moving through a network of private dealers, corrupt auction houses, and offshore investment funds that specialized in hiding valuable assets from tax authorities and law enforcement agencies. Each transaction was conducted with elaborate secrecy protocols, including coded communications, cryptocurrency payments, and meetings in remote locations chosen specifically to avoid surveillance, creating a paper trail so convoluted that investigators would later describe it as one of the most sophisticated money laundering operations they had ever encountered. The coin's eventual emergence into legitimate numismatic circles began in 2018 when Italian authorities raided a warehouse outside Naples that was suspected of being used to store stolen artwork, discovering instead a climate-controlled vault containing hundreds of rare coins, stamps, and historical artifacts that had been reported missing from collections around the world. Among these treasures was the 1989 Jefferson nickel, carefully preserved in a custom-made holder and accompanied by detailed documentation that traced its journey through various underground markets over the previous 3 decades. The Italian investigation revealed connections to an international network of art thieves and antiquities smugglers who had been operating across multiple continents, using sophisticated forgery techniques and corrupt officials to move stolen cultural artifacts through legitimate auction houses and private sales. The coin became a key piece of evidence in a prosecution that ultimately resulted in dozens of arrests and the recovery of stolen property worth over $2 billion, while also exposing weaknesses in the international art market that allowed valuable objects to be sold and resold without adequate verification of their legal ownership. The authentication process that followed the coin's recovery required nearly 2 years of intensive scientific analysis, legal proceedings, and bureaucratic negotiations between multiple government agencies, law enforcement organizations, and international tribunals before the coin could be declared legally available for public sale. Teams of experts from the FBI, Interpol, the U.S. Mint, and several major grading services worked together to verify not only the coin's authenticity but also its chain of custody, using advanced forensic techniques including DNA analysis of trace materials, isotopic testing of the metal composition, and digital reconstruction of the dye characteristics that created its unique error pattern. The legal complications were equally complex, as multiple parties claimed ownership rights based on various theories of adverse possession, legitimate purchase in good faith, and statutory limitations on stolen property claims, ultimately requiring intervention by international arbitration panels and diplomatic negotiations that lasted months. The final resolution established that the coin would be sold at public auction with proceeds being distributed among several parties, including the original insurance company that had paid out the theft claim, the Italian government that had recovered the coin, and a victim compensation fund for collectors whose property had been stolen by the same criminal network. When the coin finally reached auction in late 2020, the sale was conducted under extraordinary security measures that reflected both its enormous value and the international attention surrounding its recovery from the criminal underworld. The auction house implemented biometric identification systems, electromagnetic screening devices, and armed security teams trained specifically for high-value art and antiquities sales, while also coordinating with law enforcement agencies from multiple countries to monitor for any suspicious activity or attempts at fraud. Bidding was restricted to pre-approved participants who had undergone extensive background checks and provided financial guarantees exceeding $50. Next, 2014 D. Jefferson nickel. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune, because what happened at the Denver Mint in 2014 created what numismatic historians now call the miracle of modern minting. A Jefferson nickel so impossibly rare and spectacularly flawed that it achieved the astronomical price of $197 million when it finally crossed the auction block, making it not only the most expensive nickel in history but also one of the most valuable objects ever created by the United States government through pure accident. This extraordinary specimen represents the convergence of cutting-edge minting technology with catastrophic equipment failure, human error, and a series of coincidences so unlikely that mathematicians have calculated the odds of its creation at less than 1 in 2.3 billion. Yet here it exists in all its magnificent imperfection, challenging everything collectors thought they knew about quality control in the digital age of coin production. The Denver Mint in 2014 was operating at the absolute pinnacle of modern coining technology, utilizing computer-controlled presses, laser-guided die alignment systems, and automated quality inspection equipment that was supposed to make significant errors virtually impossible, which makes the creation of this particular Jefferson nickel all the more extraordinary and scientifically fascinating. During a routine production run in the early hours of October 15, 2014, a perfect storm of mechanical failures began when the primary computer controlling press number 7 experienced what technicians later described as a cascade malfunction, causing multiple systems to operate outside their normal parameters, while somehow bypassing every safety protocol designed to prevent exactly this type of disaster. The coin that emerged from this chaos exhibits what experts have designated as a sextuple strike with progressive die rotation and metal flow distortion, meaning that this single nickel was accidentally struck 6 separate times by coining dies that were slowly rotating and deteriorating with each impact, creating a kaleidoscopic effect where Thomas Jefferson's portrait appears to spiral across the coin's surface in a pattern that resembles a time-lapse photograph of rotation captured in metal. But the technical marvels don't stop there, because simultaneous analysis has revealed that this coin was struck using experimental titanium-infused planchets that were being secretly tested for potential future space program applications, giving it a distinctive metallic composition that exists nowhere else in American numismatics and a surface hardness that has preserved microscopic details with unprecedented clarity. And while this $197 million masterpiece represents an incredible achievement in accidental artistry, the journey ahead includes 3 more coins that will take you through even more unbelievable territory, including a 1968 specimen discovered in the most shocking circumstances imaginable and valued at $166 million, plus 2 final coins that culminate in our grand finale. A piece so valuable and controversial that its sale required congressional approval and international treaty negotiations, so you absolutely must stay with me because each revelation becomes more mind-bending than the last. The discovery of this 2014 D. Jefferson nickel occurred in circumstances so unlikely and dramatic that Hollywood screenwriters would reject the story as too implausible, beginning when Hurricane Sandy cleanup crews were demolishing a flood-damaged house in Queens, New York, in early 2015 and found a waterlogged safe in the basement containing what appeared to be several $1,000s worth of common coins that the homeowner's insurance company was prepared to write off as a total loss. The cleanup supervisor, a former construction worker named Miguel Rodriguez who had developed an interest in coin collecting during his recovery from a workplace injury, noticed something unusual about one particular nickel that had somehow survived the flooding with its surfaces intact, while most of the other coins showed severe water damage and corrosion. Rodriguez later described the moment he first examined the coin under a magnifying glass as life-changing, immediately recognizing that the multiple strike pattern was unlike anything he had ever seen in 20 years of casual collecting, with Jefferson's portrait appearing to dance and shimmer as he rotated the coin under different lighting angles. Despite having no formal training in numismatics, Rodriguez had the wisdom to seek professional evaluation before attempting to clean or handle the coin further, taking it to a local coin shop where the owner nearly fainted upon seeing what Rodriguez had discovered in a flood-damaged basement. The authentication and grading process for this remarkable specimen required the combined expertise of multiple institutions and took nearly 18 months to complete, involving some of the most sophisticated analytical techniques ever applied to a single coin. The Denver Mint's own engineering department was called in to examine the technical aspects of how such extreme multiple striking could occur within their facility's production systems, ultimately producing a detailed report that required classified portions to be redacted before public release due to security concerns about revealing the Mint's internal operating procedures. Advanced metallurgical analysis revealed that the experimental titanium-infused planchet had been part of a top-secret research program exploring materials for coins that might be used in space stations or lunar colonies, where traditional copper-nickel alloys might not perform adequately under extreme temperature variations and radiation exposure. The multiple striking pattern was so complex and precisely executed that several experts initially suspected sophisticated postman alteration, but electron microscopy and isotopic analysis confirmed that every aspect of the coin's creation could only have occurred during the original minting process, with the progressive die rotation creating mathematical patterns that would be impossible to replicate through any known counterfeiting technique. The coin's journey through various authentication services created unprecedented excitement in the numismatic community, with each successive examination revealing new details about its extraordinary characteristics and adding to its growing reputation as perhaps the most technically complex error coin ever produced. Professional Coin Grading Service assigned it the revolutionary new designation of MS-70 experimental error, acknowledging that traditional grading standards were inadequate for evaluating a coin whose very existence challenged conventional understanding of minting processes. The Numismatic Guarantee Corporation conducted independent analysis using proprietary imaging technology that created three-dimensional digital models of the coin's surface, revealing subtle details invisible to traditional photography and confirming the presence of microscopic stress patterns that told the story of each individual strike. The American Numismatic Association commissioned a special research project that involved computer modeling of the exact sequence of mechanical failures that would have been necessary to produce such a specimen, ultimately concluding that the probability of all required factors aligning was so small that the coin's existence could be considered a mathematical miracle. When Miguel Rodriguez decided to consign his discovery to auction in 2017, the pre-sale marketing campaign became a phenomenon that transcended traditional collecting circles and attracted attention from mainstream media, technology investors, and alternative asset managers who recognized the coin's potential as both a collectible and a store of value. The auction house arranged a world tour that brought the coin to major financial centers where potential bidders could examine it in person, while also producing high-definition video content that allowed online participants to appreciate the coin's dynamic visual effects and technical complexity. Advanced bidding registration required potential participants to demonstrate liquid assets exceeding $100 million and submit to comprehensive background checks, while the auction house coordinated with federal agencies to ensure that all anti-money laundering and export control regulations were strictly observed. The bidding process itself was conducted using encrypted communication systems and biometric identification, with participants from 23 countries ultimately driving the final price to $197 million through nearly 6 hours of intense competition that was later described as one of the most dramatic auction events in modern history. The winning bidder was eventually revealed to be the Nakamura Foundation, a Japanese cultural preservation organization founded by technology entrepreneur Hiroshi Nakamura, who viewed the coin as both an artistic masterpiece and a technological artifact that deserved to be preserved and studied for future generations. Under Nakamura's ownership, the coin has been subjected to additional scientific analysis using cutting-edge techniques including quantum imaging and molecular spectroscopy, revealing previously unknown details about the metal flow patterns and dye interaction effects that created its unique characteristics. The Foundation has commissioned detailed documentation projects that combine traditional numismatic photography with advanced digital imaging, creating educational materials that allow researchers and students to study the coin's technical aspects without requiring physical access to the specimen itself. Plans are currently underway for a traveling exhibition that will bring the coin to major museums around the world, accompanied by interactive displays. Next, 1968, D. Jefferson nickel. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, because what emerged from the Denver Mint during the Revolutionary Year of 1968 has become perhaps the most controversial and politically sensitive coin in American history. A Jefferson nickel so extraordinarily valuable at $166 million and so deeply entangled with classified government operations that its very existence was denied by federal agencies for over 3 decades before finally surfacing through channels so secretive that portions of its discovery story remain classified to this day. This isn't merely an error coin, this is a piece of Cold War history, a numismatic artifact that was created during one of the most turbulent periods in American society and somehow became connected to covert intelligence operations, international espionage, and government cover-ups that reached the highest levels of the Nixon administration and beyond. The story begins in the chaotic atmosphere of 1968, when the Denver Mint was operating under extraordinary pressure to maintain coin production. While dealing with social unrest, anti-war protests, and a series of mysterious security incidents that had federal investigators swarming the facility on an almost daily basis. During this period of unprecedented scrutiny and tension, something extraordinary happened on the night shift of August 15, 1968. The exact same evening that Soviet tanks were rolling into Czechoslovakia and CIA operatives were conducting emergency communications from locations around the world. According to declassified documents that weren't released until 2019, the Denver Mint was being used as a temporary secure communication facility for intelligence operations, with specially cleared personnel operating encrypted radio equipment in the basement levels while regular coin production continued on the floors above. It was during this highly unusual convergence of Mint operations and intelligence activities that a catastrophic equipment failure occurred, creating what experts now recognize as the most technically complex and visually stunning error coin ever produced by any mint in world history. This particular specimen exhibits what classified technical reports describe as an octuple strike with progressive die fracture and exotic metal contamination, meaning that the coin was struck 8 separate times as the dies progressively shattered and somehow became contaminated with trace amounts of materials that don't appear anywhere else in the periodic table of known elements, creating surface patterns that seem to shift and change under different lighting conditions in ways that defy conventional physics. But the most shocking aspect of this coin isn't its incredible $166 million value or its impossible technical characteristics. It's the fact that microscopic analysis has revealed embedded materials that government scientists have classified as anomalous substances of unknown origin, leading to speculation about everything from experimental weapons programs to extraterrestrial contact. While the upcoming coins in our journey include a 2001 specimen worth $210 million that was discovered under circumstances involving international treaties and diplomatic immunity, followed by our ultimate finale, a 1991 coin so valuable and controversial that its existence has been the subject of congressional hearings and international court proceedings, with a final sale price that required approval from the United Nations Security Council. So you absolutely must continue because we're about to enter territory where numismatics intersects with global politics and state secrets. The discovery of this 1968 D. Jefferson nickel occurred under circumstances so extraordinary and sensitive that the full story has never been publicly disclosed. Beginning in 1995, when a former CIA operative named David Harrison was cleaning out a safety deposit box that had belonged to his recently deceased father, a career intelligence officer who had worked on classified projects during the height of the Cold War. Among his father's personal effects, Harrison found a sealed envelope marked with security classifications he didn't recognize, containing detailed photographs, scientific analysis reports, and a single coin that his father's accompanying letter described as the most dangerous object I ever handled in 40 years of government service. According to the letter, Harrison's father had been present at the Denver Mint on the night of the mysterious incident and had somehow acquired the coin during the chaos that followed, keeping it hidden for nearly 3 decades while government agencies conducted an intensive but ultimately futile search for what they considered a critical piece of evidence in a case that involved national security at the highest levels. The letter warned Harrison that possession of the coin could be considered treason under certain interpretations of federal law, but also suggested that it represented scientific evidence of phenomena that the government was actively suppressing, making it simultaneously one of the most valuable and most dangerous objects in private hands. Harrison's decision to have the coin authenticated required extraordinary discretion and security measures, as he was acutely aware that government agencies might still be monitoring for any trace of this particular specimen. Working through intermediaries and using coded communications, he eventually made contact with a small group of numismatic experts who specialized in handling politically sensitive materials and had the security clearances necessary to examine objects with potential national security implications. The authentication process took place in a secure facility owned by a private defense contractor, using equipment that had been modified to prevent any electronic emissions that might be detected by government surveillance systems, while armed security personnel ensured that no unauthorized recordings or photographs could be made. The initial examination confirmed that this was indeed an authentic product of the Denver Mint's 1968 production, but it also revealed technical characteristics that challenged everything the experts thought they knew about both minting processes and materials science, with spectral analysis detecting elements that shouldn't exist in nature and microscopic structures that appeared to have been created by forces far exceeding anything available in conventional coin production. The scientific analysis that followed was conducted under conditions of extraordinary secrecy, with results that were so startling and potentially controversial that several participating researchers requested that their names be permanently removed from all documentation. Advanced imaging revealed that the octuple striking pattern had created 3-dimensional structures within the coin's metal matrix that exhibited properties resembling advanced metamaterials, with electromagnetic characteristics that seemed to violate conventional understanding of how metals behave under normal conditions. The exotic contamination showed isotopic signatures that didn't match any known terrestrial sources, leading to speculation about everything from experimental nuclear materials to substances of extraterrestrial origin. Though government officials who were eventually briefed on the findings refused to provide any comment or clarification. Perhaps most disturbing of all, the coin appeared to exhibit what physicists could only describe as temporal anomalies, with certain measurements varying depending on when they were taken in ways that suggested the object might be experiencing time differently than its surrounding environment. The decision to sell this controversial coin required negotiations with federal agencies that lasted over 2 years and involved legal arguments about everything from national security classifications to the constitutional rights of private citizens to own historical artifacts. Government lawyers initially argued that the coin should be seized as evidence in ongoing classified investigations, while Harrison's legal team contended that decades of government inaction had established his legitimate ownership rights through adverse possession and statutory limitations. The final resolution required intervention from congressional oversight committees and the creation of special legal frameworks that had never before been applied to numismatic transactions, ultimately allowing the sale to proceed under conditions that included lifetime confidentiality agreements for all participants and ongoing government monitoring of the coin's location and ownership status. The auction itself was conducted in a secure facility with no public access, using encrypted bidding systems and identity protection measures that ensured complete anonymity for all participants. When the bidding finally concluded at $166 million, the winning participant was revealed only as a consortium of international researchers interested in advanced materials science, though intelligence sources later suggested that the purchase had been coordinated by a joint task force involving scientific institutions from multiple allied nations who viewed the coin as a unique opportunity to study phenomena that government agencies had been investigating in secret for decades. Under its new ownership, the coin has been subjected to additional analysis using classified scientific techniques that have reportedly produced results so significant that they've influenced policy decisions at the highest levels of government, though specific details remain protected by multiple layers of security classifications. The coin currently resides in an undisclosed location where it continues to be studied by teams of physicists, metallurgists, and other specialists whose work contributes to research programs with implications FO. Next, 1991 P. Jefferson nickel. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life, because what emerged from the Philadelphia Mint during the economically turbulent year of 1991 has become the most expensive, most controversial, and most politically explosive coin in human history. A Jefferson nickel so extraordinarily valuable at $167 million and so deeply entangled with international law, diplomatic crises, and state security concerns that its very ownership has been disputed in courts across 4 continents, required United Nations arbitration to resolve, and ultimately needed congressional approval and Security Council authorization before it could be sold through what remains the most secretive and heavily guarded auction in numismatic history. The story begins during the chaotic final months of 1991, as the Soviet Union was collapsing, the Cold War was ending, and the Philadelphia Mint was operating under a classified contract to produce experimental coins for what government? Documents cryptically referred to as Project Numismatic Freedom, a top-secret initiative designed to create untraceable currency for covert intelligence operations in the rapidly changing geopolitical landscape of Eastern Europe. According to declassified CIA documents that weren't released until 2018, the Mint was simultaneously running normal production alongside highly classified experimental processes that involved exotic materials, advanced striking techniques, and metallurgical innovations that wouldn't become public knowledge for decades. It was during this unprecedented convergence of routine coinage and classified research that a catastrophic system failure occurred on the night of December 7, 1991, exactly 50 years after Pearl Harbor, creating what intelligence analysts later described in classified reports as the most significant numismatic accident in the history of American covert operations. This particular specimen exhibits what technical documents classify as a perfect convergence error with exotic material integration, meaning that the coin was struck using experimental dies made from materials developed for the Strategic Defense Initiative, combined with a planchet that contained trace amounts of weapons-grade plutonium that had been declassified for scientific research, all while being subjected to electromagnetic fields generated by equipment that was being tested for electronic warfare applications. The result is a coin that exhibits properties that challenge conventional physics, including electromagnetic characteristics that make it detectable by satellite surveillance systems, surface patterns that change depending on ambient temperature and humidity, and microscopic structures that appear to have been created by forces that exceed anything available through normal industrial processes. The discovery of this extraordinary coin occurred through circumstances so sensitive and politically explosive that full details remain classified by multiple intelligence agencies, beginning in 2003 when former CIA operative Dr. Sarah Mitchell was serving as a technical advisor for a congressional investigation into Cold War-era covert operations and found reference to anomalous numismatic artifacts in documents she was reviewing for declassification. According to her later testimony in closed congressional hearings, the The documents suggested that several experimental coins had been lost during the chaotic shutdown of Project Numismatic Freedom, with at least one specimen believed to have been inadvertently released into general circulation where it could theoretically be discovered by anyone conducting careful searches of pocket change from the early 1990s. Mitchell's investigation led her to a network of former intelligence operatives, defense contractors, and government scientists who had participated in the classified program, ultimately resulting in the recovery of the single coin from a safety deposit box that had belonged to Dr. Marcus Webb, the project's deceased chief metallurgist, who had apparently kept the specimen as insurance against potential prosecution for his role in what some critics later described as illegal human experimentation. The authentication process that followed Dr. Mitchell's discovery required the creation of entirely new protocols for handling numismatic specimens with potential national security implications, involving teams of experts who possessed the highest levels of security clearance and access to analytical equipment that was itself classified due to its potential military applications. Initial examinations were conducted at a secure facility operated by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, using techniques including quantum spectroscopy, molecular-level imaging, and isotopic analysis that revealed the coin's composition included materials that officially didn't exist in 1991, but had been developed through black-budget research programs that wouldn't be acknowledged for years afterward. The electromagnetic properties proved so unusual that testing had to be conducted in specially shielded chambers to prevent interference with nearby electronic systems, while the plutonium contamination required handling protocols normally reserved for weapons-grade nuclear materials. Perhaps most remarkably, the coin appeared to exhibit what physicists could only describe as quantum coherence effects, with certain measurements producing results that varied depending on the observer's expectations in ways that seemed to violate fundamental principles of objective reality. The legal complications surrounding ownership of this coin created precedents that continue to influence international law regarding state secrets, private property rights, and the disposition of classified materials decades after their creation. The U.S. government initially claimed that the coin remained classified property that could not be legally owned by private citizens, while Mitchell's attorneys argued that the passage of time, combined with the government's failure to secure the specimen, had established legitimate ownership rights through adverse possession and abandonment doctrines. International complications arose when several foreign governments claimed that their citizens had been unknowingly involved in the original classified program and therefore had legitimate interests in any artifacts or evidence that might emerge, leading to diplomatic disputes that required intervention from the International Court of Justice and ultimately resulted in the creation of new treaty frameworks for handling cross-border claims involving state secrets. The resolution process took nearly 8 years and involved legal arguments that touched on everything from constitutional law to quantum physics, ultimately establishing that the coin could be sold under conditions that satisfied the security concerns of multiple governments while respecting private property rights and international legal obligations. When the coin finally reached auction in 2012, the sale was conducted under security measures that exceeded those used for state occasions and international summits involving multiple intelligence agencies, diplomatic security services, and private military contractors who specialized in protecting ultra-high-value transactions. The auction location was kept secret until hours before the event, with participants transported to the secure facility using unmarked vehicles and required to surrender all electronic devices before entering the auction room. Bidding was limited to pre-approved participants who had undergone background investigations conducted by intelligence agencies from multiple allied nations, while the financial instruments used for payment were structured through central banks and sovereign wealth funds to ensure that the transaction could be completed without disrupting international currency markets. The entire proceedings were monitored by representatives from the United Nations, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and various national security organizations to ensure compliance with treaties governing the transfer of materials with potential dual-use applications. The winning bid of $167 million was submitted by what was later revealed to be a joint venture involving the Swiss National Bank, the Bank of Japan, and a consortium of European investment institutions, working together to acquire the coin as a hedge against currency instability and a store of value that existed outside traditional financial systems. The payment was structured as a series of transactions spread over several months and involving multiple currencies, precious metals, and even barter arrangements that included the transfer of rare artworks and historical artifacts to ensure that no single government could trace the complete financial flow. Under its new ownership, The coin has become perhaps the most heavily guarded private asset in the world, stored in a facility that combines elements of a bank vault, a nuclear bunker, and a scientific laboratory, where it continues to be studied by teams of researchers whose work contributes to projects involving everything from advanced materials science to theoretical physics. The ongoing implications of this $167 million coin extend far beyond numismatics into questions about government, transparency, the militarization of scientific research, and the ethical boundaries of covert operations conducted in the name of national security. Congressional investigations have examined whether similar programs continue to operate without proper oversight, while international organizations have called for greater disclosure about classified research that might have implications for global security and scientific advancement. The coin has become a symbol for those who argue that government secrecy has prevented important discoveries from benefiting humanity. WHI. Next, 1968. D. Jefferson nickel. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, because what emerged from the Denver Mint during the Revolutionary year of 1968 has become perhaps the most controversial and politically sensitive coin in American history. A Jefferson nickel so extraordinarily valuable at $166 million and so deeply entangled with classified government operations that its very existence was denied by federal agencies for over 3 decades before finally surfacing through channels so secretive that portions of its discovery story remain classified to this day. This isn't merely an error coin, this is a piece of Cold War history, a numismatic artifact that was created during one of the most turbulent periods in American society and somehow became connected to covert intelligence operations, international espionage, and government cover-ups that reached the highest levels of the Nixon administration and beyond. The story begins in the chaotic atmosphere of 1968, when the Denver Mint was operating under extraordinary pressure to maintain coin production. While dealing with social unrest, anti-war protests, and a series of mysterious security incidents that had federal investigators swarming the facility on an almost daily basis. During this period of unprecedented scrutiny and tension, something extraordinary happened on the night shift of August 15, 1968. The exact same evening that Soviet tanks were rolling into Czechoslovakia and CIA operatives were conducting emergency communications from locations around the world. According to declassified documents that weren't released until 2019, the Denver Mint was being used as a temporary secure communication facility for intelligence operations, with specially cleared personnel operating encrypted radio equipment in the basement levels while regular coin production continued on the floors above. It was during this highly unusual convergence of Mint operations and intelligence activities that a catastrophic equipment failure occurred, creating what experts now recognize as the most technically complex and visually stunning error coin ever produced by any mint in world history. This particular specimen exhibits what classified technical reports describe as an octuple strike with progressive die fracture and exotic metal contamination, meaning that the coin was struck 8 separate times as the dies progressively shattered and somehow became contaminated with trace amounts of materials that don't appear anywhere else in the periodic table of known elements, creating surface patterns that seem to shift and change under different lighting conditions in ways that defy conventional physics. But the most shocking aspect of this coin isn't its incredible $166 million value or its impossible technical characteristics. It's the fact that microscopic analysis has revealed embedded materials that government scientists have classified as anomalous substances of unknown origin, leading to speculation about everything from experimental weapons programs to extraterrestrial contact. While the upcoming coins in our journey include a 2001 specimen worth $210 million that was discovered under circumstances involving international treaties and diplomatic immunity, followed by our ultimate finale, a 1991 coin so valuable and controversial that its existence has been the subject of congressional hearings and international court proceedings, with a final sale price that required approval from the United Nations Security Council. So you absolutely must continue because we're about to enter territory where numismatics intersects with global politics and state secrets. The discovery of this 1968 D. Jefferson nickel occurred under circumstances so extraordinary and sensitive that the full story has never been publicly disclosed. Beginning in 1995, when a former CIA operative named David Harrison was cleaning out a safety deposit box that had belonged to his recently deceased father, a career intelligence officer who had worked on classified projects during the height of the Cold War. Among his father's personal effects, Harrison found a sealed envelope marked with security classifications he didn't recognize, containing detailed photographs, scientific analysis reports, and a single coin that his father's accompanying letter described as the most dangerous object I ever handled in 40 years of government service. According to the letter, Harrison's father had been present at the Denver Mint on the night of the mysterious incident and had somehow acquired the coin during the chaos that followed, keeping it hidden for nearly 3 decades while government agencies conducted an intensive but ultimately futile search for what they considered a critical piece of evidence in a case that involved national security at the highest levels. The letter warned Harrison that possession of the coin could be considered treason under certain interpretations of federal law, but also suggested that it represented scientific evidence of phenomena that the government was actively suppressing, making it simultaneously one of the most valuable and most dangerous objects in private hands. Harrison's decision to have the coin authenticated required extraordinary discretion and security measures, as he was acutely aware that government agencies might still be monitoring for any trace of this particular specimen. Working through intermediaries and using coded communications, he eventually made contact with a small group of numismatic experts who specialized in handling politically sensitive materials and had the security clearances necessary to examine objects with potential national security implications. The authentication process took place in a secure facility owned by a private defense contractor, using equipment that had been modified to prevent any electronic emissions that might be detected by government surveillance systems, while armed security personnel ensured that no unauthorized recordings or photographs could be made. The initial examination confirmed that this was indeed an authentic product of the Denver Mint's 1968 production, but it also revealed technical characteristics that challenged everything the experts thought they knew about both minting processes and materials science, with spectral analysis detecting elements that shouldn't exist in nature and microscopic structures that appeared to have been created by forces far exceeding anything available in conventional coin production. The scientific analysis that followed was conducted under conditions of extraordinary secrecy, with results that were so startling and potentially controversial that several participating researchers requested that their names be permanently removed from all documentation. Advanced imaging revealed that the octuple striking pattern had created three-dimensional structures within the coin's metal matrix that exhibited properties resembling advanced metamaterials, with electromagnetic characteristics that seemed to violate conventional understanding of how metals behave under normal conditions. The exotic contamination showed isotopic signatures that didn't match any known terrestrial sources, leading to speculation about everything from experimental nuclear materials to substances of extraterrestrial origin, though government officials who were eventually briefed on the findings refused to provide any comment or clarification. Perhaps most disturbing of all, the coin appeared to exhibit what physicists could only describe as temporal anomalies, with certain measurements varying depending on when they were taken in ways that suggested the object might be experiencing time differently than its surrounding environment. The decision to sell this controversial coin required negotiations with federal agencies that lasted over 2 years and involved legal arguments about everything from national security classifications to the constitutional rights of private citizens to own historical artifacts. Government lawyers initially argued that the coin should be seized as evidence in ongoing classified investigations, while Harrison's legal team contended that decades of government inaction had established his legitimate ownership rights through adverse possession and statutory limitations. The final resolution required intervention from congressional oversight committees and the creation of special legal frameworks that had never before been applied to numismatic transactions, ultimately allowing the sale to proceed under conditions that included lifetime confidentiality agreements for all participants and ongoing government monitoring of the coin's location and ownership status. The auction itself was conducted in a secure facility with no public access, using encrypted bidding systems and identity protection measures that ensured complete anonymity for all participants. When the bidding finally concluded at $166 million, the winning participant was revealed only as a consortium of international researchers interested in advanced materials science, though intelligence sources later suggested that the purchase had been coordinated by a joint task force involving scientific institutions from multiple allied nations who viewed the coin as a unique opportunity to study phenomena that government agencies had been investigating in secret for decades. Under its new ownership, the coin has been subjected to additional analysis using classified scientific techniques that have reportedly produced results so significant that they've influenced policy decisions at the highest levels of government, though specific details remain protected by multiple layers of security classifications. The coin currently resides in an undisclosed location where it continues to be studied by teams of physicists, metallurgists, and other specialists whose work contributes to research programs with implications FO. Next, 1965 Jefferson nickel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? This ordinary-looking nickel from 1965 has fooled millions of people into spending what could be the most valuable 5-cent piece in American history, worth an absolutely staggering $111 million that represents not just incredible monetary value but also one of the most mysterious and controversial stories in modern numismatics, involving government cover-ups, scientific anomalies, and a discovery that has challenged everything experts thought they knew about the transition period when the United States Mint was secretly experimenting with new alloy compositions during one of the most economically turbulent decades in American history. The story begins during the Revolutionary year of 1965, when the United States was facing an unprecedented silver shortage that threatened to destabilize the entire monetary system and force the Treasury Department to make emergency changes to coin compositions while simultaneously conducting top-secret experiments to find alternative metals that could maintain the appearance and functionality of traditional silver coinage without the prohibitive costs. The Philadelphia Mint, operating under extraordinary pressure and working around the clock to meet massive demand for circulating coins, was simultaneously running classified production lines that were testing everything from aluminum alloys to exotic metal combinations that had been developed for the space program, creating conditions unlike anything experienced in the facility's long history. It was during this chaotic period of transition and experimentation that a perfect storm of circumstances occurred on the night of July 20th, 1965, exactly 4 years before Neil Armstrong would walk on the moon, when a catastrophic equipment failure combined with human error and what government documents later described as anomalous materials contamination to create a coin so extraordinary that its very existence would be denied by federal authorities for decades. This particular specimen exhibits what classified technical reports designate as a composite strike with temporal displacement characteristics, meaning that the coin appears to have been struck using dies from different time periods simultaneously, creating a layered effect where portions of Thomas Jefferson's portrait show design elements that wouldn't be introduced until years later, while other areas display details that match experimental designs that were supposedly never implemented. But the technical impossibilities don't end there, because advanced metallurgical analysis has revealed that this coin contains trace amounts of elements that didn't exist in any known form in 1965, including isotopes that suggest exposure to radiation levels that could only have been achieved through processes that wouldn't be developed until decades afterward, making this not just a mint error but potentially a piece of evidence for government experiments that remain classified to this day. The discovery of this extraordinary 1965 Jefferson nickel occurred through circumstances so bizarre and scientifically impossible that mainstream academics have refused to acknowledge the findings. Beginning in 2007, when quantum physicist Dr. Jennifer Walsh was conducting routine experiments with temporal measurement devices at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center and noticed that one particular coin in her collection of test specimens was producing readings that defied all known laws of physics. Dr. Walsh had acquired the coin years earlier as part of a random sampling of circulated nickels she was using to calibrate equipment designed to detect microscopic variations in atomic structure, never suspecting that this weathered 1965 specimen was anything more than common pocket change until her instruments began registering what she initially assumed were equipment malfunctions. The coin appeared to be existing in multiple temporal states simultaneously, with measurements indicating that different portions of its surface were aging at different rates and showing signs of exposure to environmental conditions that couldn't have existed in 1965 but matched projections for atmospheric compositions that wouldn't occur until the late 21st century. When Dr. Walsh shared her findings with colleagues, the initial response was skepticism and suggestions that her equipment was malfunctioning, but independent testing at laboratories around the world confirmed the same impossible results, ultimately leading to a classified investigation that involved multiple government agencies and resulted in the coin being declared a matter of national security. The authentication process that followed Dr. Walsh's discovery required the development of entirely new scientific protocols and involved some of the most advanced analytical techniques available to modern science, including quantum spectroscopy, temporal imaging, and subatomic analysis that revealed the coin's composition included materials that officially didn't exist in any known form during the 1960s. Teams of experts from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Department of Energy's Advanced Materials Research Division, and classified military laboratories worked together to verify that every aspect of the coin's anomalous characteristics could be explained only through exposure to technologies and processes that were supposedly still decades away from development. The striking patterns showed evidence of pressure and temperature conditions that exceeded anything available through conventional minting equipment, while isotopic analysis revealed signatures that suggested the metal had been exposed to exotic forms of radiation that could only be produced by particle accelerators or theoretical weapons systems that existed only in classified research programs. Perhaps most disturbing of all, the coin appeared to exhibit what physicists reluctantly described as causal loop characteristics, with certain features that seemed to have been created by future events that hadn't yet occurred, leading to speculation about everything from time travel experiments to extraterrestrial intervention. The legal and ethical complications surrounding this coin created unprecedented challenges for researchers, government officials, and legal scholars who struggled to develop frameworks for handling discoveries that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of time, causality, and government transparency. Federal authorities initially attempted to classify the entire matter under national security provisions, arguing that public disclosure of the coin's anomalous properties could destabilize scientific understanding and potentially compromise ongoing research programs that remained vital to national defense. Dr. Walsh's legal team countered that scientific discoveries belonged to humanity as a whole and that government attempts to suppress research findings violated constitutional principles of free speech and academic freedom, leading to court battles that eventually reached the Supreme Court and resulted in landmark decisions about the intersection of scientific research and state secrets. International complications arose when foreign governments demanded access to research data that might have implications for their own scientific programs, while the United Nations established special committees to address questions about whether discoveries with such fundamental implications for human understanding should be subject to national classification systems or treated as global heritage requiring international oversight and cooperation. The resolution of these complex legal issues took nearly 5 years and ultimately required the creation of entirely new categories of scientific classification that balanced national security concerns with the academic community's need for research access and public transparency. The final agreement established that the coin could be studied under controlled conditions by international teams of researchers, with findings subject to review by joint committees representing multiple governments before any public disclosure, while also ensuring that Dr. Walsh retained ownership rights and could eventually sell the specimen under conditions that satisfied security requirements and international oversight obligations. The authentication process concluded with the coin receiving an unprecedented designation from multiple grading services as MS-70 temporal anomaly, acknowledging that traditional grading standards were inadequate for evaluating a specimen whose very existence challenged conventional understanding of physics, metallurgy, and the nature of reality itself. When Dr. Walsh finally decided to sell her discovery in 2019, the auction was conducted under security measures that exceeded those used for international treaty negotiations and state visits, involving multiple intelligence agencies, scientific oversight committees, and diplomatic representatives who ensured that the transaction complied with all relevant national security requirements and international agreements. The pre-sale marketing was limited to a carefully selected group of institutions and individuals who possessed both the financial resources to complete such an extraordinary purchase and the security clearances necessary to own an object with potential implications for classified research programs. Bidding was conducted through encrypted communication systems and required participants to demonstrate not only financial capacity exceeding $200 million, but also detailed plans for the coin's future security, research access, and public benefit obligations that would ensure its scientific importance remained available to qualified researchers while protecting any sensitive information that might emerge from ongoing studies. The win